that it is good that we are meeting together on Kaurna land. And it would be good just to take a moment to acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional owners of the lands that you are joining us from today, as we may be coming from many different parts of the state. Just to let you know that this session is being recorded and it will be available on the Green Adelaide YouTube channel. We'll have time at the end of the session for questions. So if you do have a question during the presentation, please pop it into the Q&A function in the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer this at the end, and we'll be monitoring this throughout the session. We have some great guest presenters here today who I'm excited to introduce to you. It's a jam-packed session, so after I introduce everyone, we'll get straight into it. So first we'll hear from Alice Woodward, who is the Education Officer with the Murray Lands and Riverlands Landscape Board, but previously she was the Citizen Science Officer for the region. Alice will be giving us an introduction to citizen science, how it can be used in the classroom, and the value that it brings to student learning. We'll then hear from two different coordinators of current citizen science projects. First will be Dr. Christy Byrne, who is the coordinator of Mozzie Monitors, and also Steve Walker, who's the coordinator of Frogwatch SA. These presenters will share a bit about their projects and how the data is collected by the public and how it's used in real-world science and research. And then we'll hear from Sarah Todd, who's the science specialist for Coromandel Valley Primary School. And she's been using citizen science across all the year levels at her school. She'll share her experiences from a teacher's perspective. And finally, we also have Sylvia Clark supporting today. Sylvia is the Citizen Science Association Chapter Chair for SA. So yeah, we have heaps of experts here with a wealth of experience and knowledge. So please do ask all your questions. All right, so I'm excited to get into it. So I'll hand over to Alice.
Like Amy said, that I am an education officer and a citizen science project officer at the Landscape Board. So I've got a bit of a good understanding of how citizen science actually works in schools. But I also was involved in a citizen science project when I was in high school. So I think it's personally really important and useful to do citizen science at a young age. So what actually is citizen science? So citizen science is the involvement of community members in scientific research that generates scientific knowledge and understanding. And there's lots of different ways to get involved in citizen science. There's so many different projects, including projects around astronomy to insects and so many more. So what actually makes a citizen science project? So the Citizen Science Association has 10 key principles of citizen science, but I think some of the main ones that are more useful for teachers to learn about are these 4 here. So citizen science allows citizens to actively be involved in the projects and generating new knowledge and understanding. They also have genuine science outcomes, so linking with wider knowledge as well. And citizen scientists may participate in various knowledge stages of the process. So this can be from the initial idea all the way to collecting the data and analysing the data. And one of the most important things is actually closing the loop, so explaining the information that was gathered and why it's been gathered, and what the outcomes of that information is. So it's quite a long process, but it's really good to have students involved in different aspects of the project. There are quite a few other important parts of citizen science, but these I think are the main ones for learning about in schools. So why do we choose to do citizen science? So one of the big things is community engagement. We want to make sure that there's opportunities for people to learn more about science, but also feel like they're making a difference in the data collection side of things, and allowing for understanding of the scientific process, because it's quite daunting and big for lots of different people, but citizen science allows that information to go back to the community in a really positive, nice way. It's also, provides data collection on a much larger scale. So one scientist can go out and collect data on one animal, But if you got 10 people involved, think about how much more data that would be collected over time. So I know Steve will probably talk about this, but frogs are a great example of this in SA. So it's also just bridging the gap between community knowledge and professional research. This is something that's quite often missed in science, so it's actually really important. Also, diverse perspectives are really, really good. It allows for better understanding of what's happening, but also new ideas and new ways to get involved and new ways to create change. So lots of different positives around why you might want to do citizen science. So, citizen science in school. So we, as a landscape board, are pretty lucky and have actually been able to do quite a few projects with students. Luckily, we do have a couple of engagement officers that do actively work with schools. But some of the projects I wanted to have just a little example of was one of them is Saw Your Undies. So you can see the very cute kids here, and Roisin, our other ed officer. You bury cotton undies for 8 weeks and have a look at how healthy your soil is. So it's a really nice way to get engaged, but you also understand what's happening. That data also then goes back to our sustainable ag officers, and they can better understand what's happening throughout our region. So it's really nice to be able to connect in a little bit wider with projects. So another project I just wanted to talk about. So this is quite a different project on a quite a different scale, but we had 50 Malays traps sent around WA, South Australia and Queensland with to collect insect specimens. These insects were then DNA barcoded, and a small selection were actually looked at by taxonomists, and new species were named because of this project. So this was fully engaging with students from the beginning all the way to the end of the naming process. So very, very different project than just bearing some undies, but a really good positive outcome. But there's the downsides of these kind of big projects are that as you can see, there's so many different partners. It was quite expensive to run. We're not able to run it for multiple years just because of capacity of people. But some of the really positive things that have come out of it were there's a really, really good resource on our Insect Investigators website around collecting data, and there's links with curriculum and ways for teachers to get involved outside of just being involved in this specific project. There's definitely things that you can still look at insects through projects like iNaturalist, which is an online database, and there's lots of cool things. So I just want to also show you like the map of where all the schools were set up, because it's pretty cool that we had such a good spread of data collection around this project. So another cool, like I'm just giving you a very brief overview of lots of different projects, but a more localized project is the Water Watch SA. So this has actually been run since the 1990s. So it's been around for quite a long time, and it's undergone quite a few changes to allow for the best quality data possible. But it originally was a school-based project, and this is one where the information that has been gathered has actually led to some reporting and some changes within our landscape board, which is really cool. But like it's not necessarily run everywhere, but I know that our region, Northern and York region, and Port Adelaide Enfield Council area all have a Water Watch program set up, and it's looking at water quality, but it's also helping the students understand a little bit more about their local waterways and ways to make an impact while also collecting important data. This is the project I was involved in high school, so it's been around for a long time. So I think the last one I'm going to talk about is, so 1 Million Turtles is a citizen science project around collecting data on our really important native turtles. And there's one aspect that I think is most useful and easy to do in a classroom, and it's actually a nest predation survey. So this survey is around burying chicken eggs to learn more about fox predation. So fox predation is one of our key threats to our turtles, because one fox can dig up like 10 nests in a night plus many more, and that doesn't allow for our really important turtles to get back into the water, breed up, and survive as a species. So we set up 1 Million Turtles set up this nest rotation survey to run where you bury chicken eggs and record how often you see them being predated on. This data all actually goes back into a database, and we have information about where key spots for predation are across the whole of Australia. So even just one person doing this with their classroom helps us with our understanding of the turtle population and where the risks are. So it's really important. 1 Million Turtles is also a really good one for lesson plans. So there is a lot of different information. There's this one I'm showing you right now is like a 7 lesson plan. So you can link in all the different aspects of turtle monitoring with how you're doing it in school. So there's a lot of good info out there if you're interested in doing citizen science within your classroom. The other thing I wanted to have just a quick chat about was how it links with the curriculum. So some of my colleagues are probably a little bit more on top of some of the curriculum links, but there's so many ways that the citizen science actually fits in quite well with the curriculum. This here is a example of the water watch and macroinvertebrates and how many links there are to curriculum at a year 7 level. But some of the key positions, I can't say words, within the new curriculum links with citizen science are around being environmentally responsible and environmentally conscious. So that's like across quite a few aspects of the curriculum. So I think it's quite useful, but you're also collecting real life data that can be applied to things like maths or even there's other aspects, not just science and HASS, which are the 2 main ones that you can connect in with. So I think that's the last thing I wanted to just have a chat about was I just explained a couple different examples of different projects, but there's ways you can connect in and like adopt a site. That's what we kind of like to refer to it as. And you pick your spot and look at different aspects of the environment. So you'll hear from Steve and frogs. So you can do a frog recording, you can do water watch, you can do turtles all at the same site, and you get a better understanding of the environment as a whole. This can either be done on school grounds, but if there is a community area locally close by, it also links to ways for students to participate in different community projects and explore like the angle of civic responsibility and their own contribution to that sort of side of things within areas of community. So there's lots of different ways to get involved in schools, and we at the board have quite a lot of ideas and stuff, so always happy to share a little bit wider. Cool, so that's me. I'm going to pass back to Amy for the next one.
Great, thanks Alice, thanks for that. I know it was really cool to see how you can combine lots of different projects and adopt the site, and yeah, how citizen science can be incorporated not just in your science but across the school as well. That was really cool. Just a reminder that if you've got questions, write them down in the Q&A function, because yeah, we want to answer all your questions. I'm going to hand over to Christy now, who's going to talk about Mozzie monitors.
Thanks, Amy. So I'll just introduce some of how well we can see them. That's some of my little Mozzie larvae that I collected for my last lot of events that I did out with a school visit. So let's just see if I can share my screen now. So I'm from UniSA and we run a program called Mozzie Monitors. And this program has actually been running since 2018. It was developed by one of our very talented PhD students who is now working in citizen science in New South Wales. Basically, we provide citizens with these mosquito traps in their homes, and they collect generally over 1 month during the year and report back to us what they find in their traps. they report by sending in photos for us to ID, which we do all through email. We can also report using iNaturalist, which if you're not familiar with, I really highly recommend you go and check out iNaturalist. It's a great way of sharing and recording environmental data, and anyone has access to it once the information is up on that website. So this is our landing page, and you can see we've got over 9,000 observations in our project from almost 2,000 observers. And the good thing about this is it shares the burden of identification as well. So anyone in the world can actually help us with our mosquito identification. So why are we interested in mosquitoes? I'll start with some of the science, and then I'll talk more specifically about Mozzie monitors in schools. So mosquitoes are one of the most deadly animals that we have the privilege of sharing the earth with because of the mosquito-borne diseases that they carry. But we're also interested in them from a biodiversity perspective. So recently, a colleague of mine published 20 years worth of data about the mosquito fauna along the Murray River here in SA. And interestingly, what we found is in that 20-year period, the numbers and the diversity actually declined in a number of regions. And this is a little bit contradictory to what the dogma around climate change and increased global temperatures says about mosquito populations increasing. So it just highlights that we really need to have a granular level of understanding about what's going on with the species in our local areas so that we can forward plan and manage potential risk scenarios, particularly when we're talking about a class of animals which can carry diseases and can cause public health issues. So we had a number of goals with Mozzie monitors. One side of it is obviously to collect data. So we want to enlist people in their own backyards to bring data in and access places that we can't access ourselves. We only have a very small capacity for surveillance at the moment. So by inviting people to survey in their own backyards, we get a much greater representation of what's going on in mosquito populations. But there's also an aspect of providing information to the population and getting people to learn more about mosquitoes. And we have actually found that this program is quite an effective way of getting people to have a better understanding of mosquitoes. And we often get reports back from our participants that, oh, we had this huge number of mosquitoes in our first trap. Then we went and surveyed our backyard and we found the sources of these mosquitoes. We were able to empty pots and buckets around the house, and we noticed in our next 2 trap cycles, we had reduced numbers. So it's giving people a sense of ownership, and they're actually able to then affect their own environment. We also have seen reports of citizen scientists bringing forth new discoveries. So there was a discovery of this particular mosquito in an area which had previously been undescribed. There's also been a number of cases in Europe in particular, where mosquitoes which are quite problematic in terms of disease risk have been identified through citizen science programs. So in reality, this citizen science actually is contributing to a bigger picture and helping health agencies take action around mosquito-borne disease. So why should you get your class involved in something like Mozzie monitors, or Mozzie monitors in particular? We've visited a lot of schools now, and we've probably spoke to over 1,000 students. And the first thing we do in any visit is we ask, what do you know about mosquitoes? And we're always surprised at the wealth of knowledge students already come with. So being able to tap into model organism that students already have a wealth of knowledge in helps you guys out, because obviously you don't have to give as much backstory. Mosquitoes can be linked to a really broad range of topics. So obviously ecology and the environment. The life cycle is interesting because they go through an aquatic larval stage. They have a lot of different environmental niches, so different species will explore all sorts of environments, which can be interesting for kids to learn about. We've had a lot of teachers linking the program to their classification units. Obviously, there's environmental surveillance, health and disease. There's also a lot of genetic elements that can be looked at with mosquitoes, because genetics have been used quite broadly in mosquito control efforts, as well as some biological controls and introduced species. So it's also very adaptable. So we've worked with kindergarten students, which is chaotic, but they loved it, all the way through to senior school. The program we've developed at the moment is kind of targeted at middle school, and we find it's very successful with sort of 6s, 7s, 8s, and even 9s, but it can be adapted for the younger classes as well. It's low cost, so the basic materials, we supply the basic traps, and there are extension activities around setting bucket traps, which just require a bucket. And we have a range of resources which we've developed. So just want to share really quickly some of those resources, as what those resources look like. So we've been lucky enough to work with the Education Futures Academy here at UniSA, and they have added a huge depth of knowledge and expertise to the activities that we had developed for Mozzie Monitors, and come up with this beautiful lesson plan that steps teachers and classes through the Mozzie Monitors program. So we have our curriculum links, and we have a range of activities. So we have everything from this very simple make a mosquito out of pipe cleaners, all the way up to the a very advanced card game, which has so much biology packed into it around mosquito life cycle and all the control efforts that actually happen in real life. A lot of these I like because they are things that students can take on themselves personally. So taking on responsibility to protect themselves against mosquito-borne diseases when they go to high-risk areas. But they also get to learn about some of the genetic changes that can be made to reduce mosquito numbers, things around vaccinations. So there is a lot of science in there, and it's also got some very fun cartoons and play on words, and so it's a really nice resource to have. And then obviously we've got our activities around the actual monitoring program. So getting students to participate in something like this long-term can be difficult, but we have a lot of cues in there for teachers on how to keep students motivated and ideas around how to give them ownership over the project. So I will provide all these slides to Amy with all the links to our citizen science program, which all is free to download, and the Facebook page, as well as iNaturalist. And these people here, so Debbie and Craig, are the two who are kind of in charge of running the project. So if you have any more questions, you can contact us at the Mozzie Monitors or either of those two people. So thank you. I'll hand back to Amy now.
Awesome. Thank you, Christy. That's really cool. Those resources look really exciting and really fun. Now we're going to hear from Steve, who is the Frogwatch SA coordinator.
Thank you, Amy. So I've been involved in citizen science for about 30 years now, coordinating the Frogwatch program. And Frogwatch is a continuation of a program which has been running in South Australia since 1990. And in this program, we ask people all over South Australia to go out and make recordings of frogs in their local wardway, in their backyard, in their local reserve or national park, using a smartphone app called Frog Spotter. And it's designed so that you can make a recording of between about 3 and 5 minutes, collect some environmental information about the site you're at, Put in some information about the frogs if you know them and submit that to us. You can also attach some photographs. And you may wonder why on earth anybody would be interested in monitoring frogs, particularly over a 30+ year time period. The main thing to consider is that frogs are a major link between freshwater and terrestrial ecosystems. So they're really good at cycling nutrients between the aquatic systems and land and vice versa. And we know this because frogs, for the most part, have got a dual lifestyle. So they spend part of their life in water as an egg and a tadpole. And then when they turn into frogs, they spend time on land. So they're feeding in the water as babies, feeding on the land as adults, and they're exposed to predators in both of those environments. So really, really good at cycling nutrients through the water. But unfortunately, amphibians are the most endangered group of animals on the planet, and about 42% of all amphibian species are currently faced with extinction, and this number seems to be increasing over time. So in effect, canaries are a little bit like the canary in the coal mine, giving us advanced warning of any issues that we may be experiencing in those land and water environments. But the really cool thing about frogs is you can identify each species by the call made by the male frog. So basically speaking, the males are going to start calling in breeding season, saying to the girls, hey, I'm really sexy, come and mate with me. And because every species sounds different, we can make a recording, listen to that recording, and find out exactly what species are known at that site. Once you submit your recording through the smartphone app, it goes straight to our website. Anybody on the planet can access that information. When the data first goes up, you will be able to see whether it's been verified by experts. It gets tagged. So for example, this recording here has been verified. If it hasn't yet been verified, it's tagged as pending, which means you can listen to it, you can see what people submitted, but it hasn't yet been assessed by experts. And all of the data that's on our website is completely open source. So anybody on the planet can extract that information in an Excel compatible text file. So you can do any sort of data manipulation and interrogation that you like. If you click on one of those sites on the map, it will open up the recording and anybody can then access this information. So you can play the survey if you like, so you can listen to the frogs that are recording in that survey. You can see what the user submitted as being what frogs they thought were calling. So in this example here, this is a survey that I made early this year, and I have said that I thought that there were some bibrons toadlets calling. Once it has been verified by an expert, you will then see what the expert said was calling. So in this example, I said that there were some bibrons toadlets calling. When I came and verified it, I agreed with myself. So I was pretty happy. I got that right, 2 thumbs up. But seriously, it's a really good way for you to test your identification skills. You don't have to try to guess what the frogs are. So if you've got absolutely no idea, you can leave it blank. We will still let you know what frogs are calling on that survey. You can also see any photographs that have been submitted through the app. So typically we ask people to take a habitat photo. We will only ask them to do that during the day. If it's pitch black and you try to take a photo and it's just black or a little grey splodge, that's of no use to anybody. But certainly if you're making a survey during the day, you can get a nice site photo. You will also see all the information that has been submitted regarding the environment. So habitat type, what the weather's doing, the temperature and so forth. And there's a nice little interactive map so you can see exactly where that survey has been made. You can make surveys at any time of the year, any time, day or night. Most frogs are going to be calling in the evening, but obviously schools don't typically want to go out and do a survey at 1 o'clock in the morning with their kids. So you can actually make surveys during the day and still send that in. That's fine. We also have 4 seasonal censuses each year, where we are encouraging people to go out within that 8-day period at the start of each season to try and get a really good understanding of how the different frogs are behaving over time. So some frogs have got a peak season early in winter, others in spring, some in summer. So you can see how the frog communities change over time. So how is this data used in the real world? It's really interesting. So an example here is the City of Onkaparinga Urban Creek Recovery Project. They have been doing a lot of revegetation of creeks in the City of Onkaparinga, and they are using frog monitoring as a way of detecting how the frogs are responding to those environment changes. So hopefully as they improve the waterways, they'll start seeing the frogs increase in numbers as well. And one of the really useful tools for schools is that you can set up a group on the Frogwatch website. So you can have a group similar to the City of Onkaparinga one here, where all of your members can collate their surveys. So it's a one-stop point where you can access all the information for all the surveys that your members have submitted. So if you went and browsed by the group, you found your group, you click on that, you will see all the surveys that have been submitted by all those members. And if you scroll down below the map, you'll see who the members in that group are. And then anybody on the planet can click join this group and ask to become a member of your group. But the important thing here is that the person who set up the group has full control of the group. So for example, if you were a teacher at Coromandel Valley Primary School and you wanted to set up a group for your students in your class or a number of classes at your school, you could just go to the members section on the website, click create a group. It will then ask you to give the group a name. And if you want, you can put in a description of the group and then create the group. Once somebody visits the group page on the website and clicks join, they don't automatically become a member. You will get an email saying that this person wants to join your group. You then have to click on that link to open up your group. You can see the information about the person who's requested to become a member, and then you can say yes or no, I want you to be a member. At some point in the future, you might decide, actually, I want to get rid of this person. They're no longer suitable to be a part of our group anymore. You can simply go into the group section, manage your group, and then if you want, you can go in there and you can evict the user. So you maintain control of the group the whole time. So it's really useful if you've got a number of students who are working at your site, or you might have a number of sites that you're visiting. You can see how the frogs are changing over time for your students. It's really fun little activity to get involved in. In terms of how the data is used in the real world, I did give you the example of the City of Onkaparinga Urban Creek Recovery Project, a really nice one. Another example is that the Department of Environment and Water manages weir pools in the River Murray. And typically over history, what they have done is tried to balance the downstream and upstream water levels. So they can open and close the weirs to try to maintain that water level. But what they've been thinking about doing recently is seeing if they can increase the amount of water upstream of the weir to try to flood some of those sections of the Murray upstream. So for example, here above Lock 1, there's a site which is called McBean's Pond. You can see that there's a little bit of a channel. When the water level is high enough, some of the water from the Murray will flow into that pond. But if the water level is really low, it's basically separated off from the river. What they have been wanting to do is think about, well, can we manage these wetlands more effectively so that we can provide water in those ponds to improve the breeding conditions for frogs and fish and other water life. So they engaged Rupert Mathman from the Flinders University to try to develop a monitoring program so that they could effectively measure the success or otherwise of their weir pool manipulation. So Rupert decided to try and get hold of some of the frog data for South Australia to see if he could come up with a good way to work out when is the best time of year to do the surveys, how many surveys do I need to set up to make sure I get enough information about the frogs. So he had a look at some of the government collected data, and he found that he could access data from 2003 to 2023. Around about 5,000 recordings had been made, but they were all made in the Murray Valley. They were all made between September and December, and they were all made between 8 p.m. and midnight. So it's a really limited amount of information for him to access. When he had a look at citizen science data, such as that collected by Frogwatch South Australia, he found that he could access data going back to 1994. There were over 33,000 recordings of frogs made throughout that program. So about 90% of all the information on frogs in South Australia has been collected by citizen science. It includes recordings that have been made throughout the entire year and recordings made at different times of the day. And about 18,000 of those surveys are recorded from areas where no other government information is collected. So he found it a really useful source of data for his program. He was able to put the information into some complicated mathematical modeling, and he was then able to look at when is the time of the year when frogs are likely to be calling, when are they going to be active throughout the day, and how much effort do I need to put in to try to detect these frogs. And he decided to focus on the southern bell frog, the one highlighted in red, because that is the frog which, according to the data, was the hardest one to detect. So he knew that if he set up a frog monitoring program which was able to detect that species, he should be able to detect the other species as well, and then get a really good idea of how effective that whirlpool manipulation has been. So citizen science was a really important source of information for him. In a similar way, the Murraylands and Riverland Landscape Board wetlands team, they have been trying to support the southern bell frog throughout the region. The southern bell frog is a threatened species in South Australia. It's had significant decline over the years. So they have really been wanting to make sure that they can manage their wetlands to provide the best possible conditions for the breeding of this frog. They manage two basic sorts of wetlands in their system. There's the pool connected wetlands, so similar to McBean's Pond, where there's a channel between the main part of the River Murray and the wetlands. If the water level is right, you can flood those wetlands, so they can open and close little weirs to manage that. The other sorts of wetlands they've got are temporary, and these are completely disconnected from the river. So they can't open and close gates to let water come in. So they've actually got to physically pump water from the Murray into these ponds to raise the water level to get the conditions suitable for frogs. So they've been using frog monitoring as a way for them to see when are frogs active throughout the region, what are the particular triggers to get these frogs to breed, and then can we adjust the water levels to make sure that they're suitable for the frog breeding. And if you have a look at the surveys that have been done throughout the Murray in the last 12 months, you can see these are all sites where that southern bell frog has been recorded. So it's really demonstrating that since they've been able to manipulate these wetlands, they've really improved the conditions for these frogs, and they're now starting to be found in quite good numbers throughout the Murray. This is information that they wouldn't have been able to detect without citizen science programs like Frogwatch. So thank you. I'll hand back to Amy.
Great. Thanks, Steve. And yeah, it's really good to see some real world examples of how citizen science is used. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who's Sarah Todd, who's the science specialist from Coromandel Valley Primary School, and she's going to share some of her experiences.
Thank you, Amy. Okay. Oh. Okay. So I'll just share a couple of things that we've been doing at school. I've been at Coromandel Valley Primary School this is my 6th year now. So I really try and encourage the kids to get interested in their environment. And I think doing all the citizen science stuff, just, I don't know, gets them caring as well and teaching others about the environment that they live in. So I see reception to Year 6 students for one lesson a week, and every year we do the Aussie bird count. The picture on the left here, we just bring out the Green Adelaide ID charts and we do some counting, and I do the recording and put it in on the webpage or the app. The older kids download the app and they're able to do that with their devices when we're travelling through the school. Each year during the spring, we do a school biodiversity audit. Last year, we noticed that we needed more flowering natives and more pollinators. It will be great to see the change this year after planting more new natives. So that will be something that the kids, I hope, will be able to see the change with. Last year, we had a whole school unit of inquiry. And throughout the audit previously, the students noticed that there weren't hollows in the trees. And they decided that they wanted to take some action and make some change. So they constructed and had installed some possum, microbat and bird boxes in our neighbouring reserve at Frank Smith Park. This is the middle picture here, us watching James Smith from 4Nature install a kookaburra box. And these kids down here were part of the group that were, involved in that. And thank you to Onkaparinga Council and 4Nature. So we were able to partner with the council, who allowed us to put 10 boxes that were school made in that park. And this picture over here are just the kids planting the natives, which hopefully we're going to be able to see some change in biodiversity. We've purchased nesting box cameras with some grant money that we're going to use to monitor the boxes that have gone up in the local park. Now, another thing I wanted to share was about our youth environmental leaders and bandicoots. This is probably one of our biggest citizen science successes in the last couple of years. So one of our students saw a bandicoot when he was walking his dog, or he thought so, which turned into a 2-year project so far with great success and many stakeholders. We visited the local kindy, presented at assemblies, contacted the local council, partnered with the Bandicoot Superhighway project. We're on a BTN segment and won an Oliphant Science Award for the Citizen Science category. This project was called Bringing Back the Bandicoots to Frank Smith Park, and it was a student-led citizen science project. So I just supported these kids and sort of followed their lead. We won a grassroots grant to purchase the motion sensor cameras. So this picture in the top left was our first I suppose, proper image of the bandicoot that we then had confirmed by a support from the Green Adelaide ecologist. She also helped us learn more about the bandicoots and confirmed this suspicion. This picture in the middle are the kids organising their interview for the BTN episode. Down the bottom left, we've got this little sort of roadshow that we took to the local kindy, so that these students were teaching the kindy students about bandicoots and what they can do to help. And then, this picture on the top right is some students at the Oliphant Science Awards receiving their Citizen Science Award. So my ideas for the future, hoping to use iNaturalist for a school BioBlitz, teaching the students how to use iNaturalist as a tool. So I went to the Ferox Australis free citizen science for educators workshop at the end of last year. So I'm feeling more equipped and able to teach the kids about it. I thought the idea of IDing species was a restricting factor, but now I know that taking good photos and uploading them, and then there are experts that can ID them for you, which is really fantastic. I'm hoping to do a community BioBlitz in October, partnered with our local council and the Friends of group. So getting the community involved, which I'm really excited about. Seeking another grassroots grant to fund more local bandicoot work, so to continue that citizen science project as well, and hoping to enter into the Oliphant Science Awards with our biodiversity data and this year's data after our revegetation project. So really excited about that. This bottom right-hand picture is the students making a bandicoot bungalow, which was like an artificial home for these bandicoots in the park. So they were able to construct that with the help of our groundskeeper. So getting more cameras and putting them in there and monitoring how often they visit this bungalow, what times of the day, that's the sort of thing we can find out with these images, or the motion sensor cameras that we set up. And yeah, looking forward for the kids to download the iNaturalist app, the older ones that have their own devices. So I can teach them how to take photos, upload it to a project that I can put on for the kids, and then we can track that data and see what the experts are saying about what we've got at school. And getting teachers involved. This Ferox Australis session that I went to was free and it was really engaging. And they've said that anytime I've got any questions that they're able to help out with that. I'd recommend going in for the Oliphant Science Awards, the Citizen Science Project, having a look at the criteria, having a go at entering a project in for your school. That was really worthwhile, beneficial. You can see the past winners on their webpage, which is really handy sometimes to see what sort of projects have been entered in and what success they've had. The iBandy project. There's some stuff on the CSIRO. Going to join up this Frog Watch. Thank you for that, Steve. And there's Chart Your Fart. There's lots of different options on the CSIRO webpage, which I think would be really handy. Some have apps that are downloadable, but I would encourage teachers to have a go. Get the kids outside, get them learning, caring for their environment, making connections.
All right.
Amy, I'm going to send back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That's really great to hear what you've been doing at Coromandel Valley Primary School. And so now I'm going to open up for some question and answers. So yeah, if the presenters want to turn their cameras back on, because I'm sure we all have some questions for everyone. We do have a question following Sarah's presentation about, is it challenging organising outside school trips? And do you have any advice for convincing your school to support these things?
What was the first question about? Able, is it tricky to go
organising excursions outside your school?
Yes, yes and no. We are really lucky that we neighbour on this reserve that we were talking about. So as long as you've got your ratio, and you could just ask parent volunteers, I would have them in during the student's lesson. So it would only be one lesson, and I'd give some parent volunteers enough notice, make sure they've got their necessary checks. And yeah, a lot of the time they're really willing to come along. They're really interested as well, and they want to support their kids.
Cool. We also have another question which Sarah and Alice might be able to talk about, was what devices do your students have access to for the iNaturalist observations?
Well, this is new for me, but I have I've got the iNaturalist app, but I've been uploading observations. Yes, Miriam, you do have to have a certain number before you can set up a project. So if I set up a project, the kids can access it, so they can join my project. So then I would be a little bit like what Steve was saying. You could set up a project under someone's name, but then you have people take like images and add it to your project, if that's right, I think.
Mm-hmm. With the devices and stuff, we've worked with schools and they've brought out iPads. So they haven't necessarily uploaded the information themselves, because you have to be a certain age, and these were quite young primary school students, but they were really good at taking photos. So we're looking at fungi, and they were taking photos of the fungi with like little rulers and things like that. So they were really engaged in that part of it. And then the teacher that we were working with uploaded the photos, and we've helped them out with that sort of stuff before as well.
I think that was the next plan of what I'd do. Get the kids to take good photos. They could put them on a Google Drive or something, and then I could, sift through, or have a group of kids that could sift through them and pick out the good ones.
Yeah, one of the good things about the iNaturalist platform is you can do it as a completely web-based on your computer. So if you've gone out and taken photographs with your high-quality DSLR camera, you can upload those to the website, put in your information, and it still gets counted the same way as if you had done it on your app.
And I would just suggest with iNaturalist, don't use the camera function through the app because the quality of the images is just no good. So take the image, even if it's with your smart device, your smartphone, and then go in and import the image into the app after.
Right. Okay, I've got a question for Sylvia. Is there anything you'd recommend for a teacher who is new to citizen science and they're not sure where to start?
That's a tricky one. There's so many options out there. I think, yeah, like I love Sarah's idea of exploring with the kids about the kind of things that they're interested in and some local topics, things that are happening in the local environment, and then have a look at what sort of citizen science project might already be in existence, or then make contact with us about suggestions on the best way we can think of to connect with what those students are already interested in. Because yeah, there's so many of them out there. And yeah, some need a little bit of equipment like the Water Watch program, but often you can borrow those sets of equipment. Others just need something to take a photo. So most of them, I think the ones we've kind of mentioned for schools are relatively simple to get involved with, but might take a bit of creative thinking in how to make it work for the classroom, and how to most engage people. Can I also put in a tip for the Oliphant Science Awards that Sarah's
Absolutely, yeah.
very nicely promoted? Yeah, it's a wonderful new category we've had for the last 2 years. And just for a tip, if you're thinking of getting involved in it, is to be citizen science, it needs to create that new knowledge and understanding that Alice talked about. And so if it's a project that's just done in a classroom but doesn't have any connection outside the classroom, it's sort of not increasing the world's knowledge. Like it's educating the students, and that's a wonderful thing. But for it to be citizen science, it needs to go beyond the classroom. So
GPS signal lost.
Sorry. So yeah, like using an app that is a publicly accessible database like iNaturalist, or like the Bandicoot project, where they connected with scientists that are already involved in bandicoots and want to know more information, and then sharing that with the wider community as well. That's what takes it to the level of being citizen science.
Great. Thanks for those tips. We have a question for Steve, and it says, how late is best for frog calls? Is twilight late enough to be worthwhile?
Yeah, I generally suggest that most frogs are going to be active about an hour or so after dusk. They will keep going throughout the night, but most people don't want to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to do a survey. So an hour or so after dark is a really good time.
Cool. And a question for Christy about the schools that have been involved in Mozzie Monitors. What schools have been involved, and what's the feedback from the schools?
So we've really been pushing for school involvement only probably in the last 2 years, and being able to develop this whole lesson plan with all the materials available to teachers. We've had about, just put the numbers together, it was about 18 schools so far. A lot of them have been in New South Wales because that is where Larissa, who set up the project, is actually working. So she's done great groundwork in connecting into schools there. But we had 8 schools this year in Mozzie Month, which has just finished, and all the feedback's been really positive. The students were all very excited to go out and see what was in their traps every week. Photographing is a little bit of a learning curve for the students, so that is something that the teacher needs to kind of assist, especially with the younger students. But generally, we've got really positive feedback that the students are engaged. One teacher wrote to me and said, the students were very upset because another class used it as a rubbish bin, and then they went out and took the message around to all the other classes to say, this is a mosquito trap and don't put rubbish in it, and, you know, please, and taught some of the other kids about the mosquito Mozzie Monitors program, which is really great. So we're seeing a lot of ownership by the students, and we suggest doing things like giving classes students monitoring duty. So task a couple of students each week to monitor the traps and report back to the class, and even do things like report back to the school. So one school each week that I sent a report out, they would then display that on their classroom window, and then other students in the school could walk past and see what mosquitoes were collected and that kind of thing. So it's been really positive, and yeah, it's amazing how much attention a trap with a few little bugs in it can actually generate.
Awesome. Well, I think we have come to the end. Is there any more questions? Just checking. No. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, and a huge thanks to all our wonderful presenters. I'll be sending a follow-up email soon, but in the meantime, if you're interested in learning more about the Mozzie Monitors or Frogwatch SA projects, you can find information online. And I'd also encourage you to contact your landscape board's education teams, whether that be Green Adelaide if you're in Metropolitan Adelaide, or one of the 8 regional landscape boards, and we can support you in exploring how to incorporate citizen science in your classroom. We'd also love to hear about how you might already be using citizen science with your students. We're always on the lookout for great stories to feature in our e-news, and it's a fantastic way to share ideas and inspiration with other educators across the state. And don't forget, April is Citizen Science Month, so keep an eye out for more PD opportunities that might be coming up. So thanks again for your interest and your enthusiasm, and all the best with bringing citizen science into your classroom. Thank you, everyone.